Dear learners, today we will discuss International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights 1966 and human trafficking. You know, till now we have discussed the legislations related to human trafficking in India. We have discussed convention and protocol and then UDHR related to human rights, and in this we will be discussing the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights and human trafficking. So we will not discuss the entire covenant, but we will only discuss the relevant articles related to human trafficking. So this was adopted and opened for signature, ratification and accession by General Assembly Resolution 2200A of 16 December 1966, entry into force 23rd March 1976 in accordance with Article 49. Very important. The state parties to the present covenant, considering that in accordance with the principles proclaimed in the Charter of the United Nations, recognition of the inherent dignity and of the equal and inalienable rights of all members of the human family is the foundation of freedom, justice and peace in the world. So preamble is very important, you know. Recognizing that these rights derive from the inherent dignity of human person. So dignity is the prime concern. Recognizing that in accordance with the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which we had discussed in the earlier session, the ideal of free human beings enjoying civil and political freedom and freedom from fear and want can only be achieved if conditions are created whereby everyone may enjoy his civil and political rights as well as his economic, social and cultural rights. So civil and political rights are the first generation of human rights. Consideration the obligation of state under the Charter of the United Nations to promote universal respect for and observation of human rights and freedoms. Realizing that the individuals having duties to other individuals and to the community to which they belong is under a responsibility to strive for the promotion and observance of the rights recognized in the present covenant. So all the parties agree upon the following articles. Article 1. All peoples have the right of self-determination, but right of self-determination is not available to a person who has been trafficked because he or she lives in captivity. So neither they have political status, they are away from their family members, so cannot enjoy economic, social and cultural rights. They are deprived of means of sustenance. A vulnerable person is a deprived person, and a trafficked person has no say. He is never being heard. He cannot say no to something, he cannot say yes to something, he cannot make choices. He is exploited, he is abused, he is traumatized, but with no say. So Article 1 is not applicable on a person who has been trafficked. This article talks about non-discrimination on the basis of race, color, sex, language, religion, political or other opinion, national or social origin, property, birth or other status. But in actual, a trafficked person is discriminated on the basis of all these factors or any one of these factors and is too vulnerable to resist, to speak up, to say no. Article 3 says that the state parties will ensure equal rights of men and women to employment and other civil and political rights enumerated in the covenant. Just refer to Article 23 of the Constitution of India and equality rights under Article 14. this right is not available to people who are trafficked, as out of their vulnerability they are exploited and abused. So, we have signed the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, but in actual the people who have been trafficked in India do not get this right. This article further says that if their rights are violated, then people have remedy to approach judiciary, but trafficked people live in captivity and terror. So, it is very difficult for them to come out of their vulnerability and approach the court for justice. Article 4 talks about national emergency. In national emergency, or when the existence of the state is in danger, the state can take measures derogating from their obligation under the present covenant. It further says that in no situation Article 6, Article 7, Article 8, paragraph 1 and 2, Article 11, Article 15, Article 16 and 18 may be derogated by the state. So, these articles cannot be derogated by the state on any ground. Article 6 talks about that every human being has the inherent right to life, and this right should be protected by the law. Just refer to Article 21 of the Constitution of India. No one should be arbitrarily deprived of this right to life. The people who have been trafficked are in constant fear of trauma, torture and exploitation. So, this right is violated in case of trafficked victim every second. Article 7 says that no one should be subjected to torture or cruel, inhumane or degrading treatment or punishment. It further says that no one should be subjected to scientific experiments or medical experiments without his free consent. In actual, a person who has been trafficked is subjected to torture, cruel, inhumane, degrading treatment or punishment, and there is no consent in cases of people who have been trafficked, because nobody asks for their consent. Nobody will consent to be humiliated, to be traumatized, to be exploited, but out of vulnerability one is exploited, one is facing cruel, inhumane treatment, one is facing torture, and India being a party to this covenant, it is the high time that we implement the Constitution of India and other laws strictly, so that somebody's right is not violated under this protocol, or neither under the protocol, neither under this covenant. Article 8 talks about prohibition of slavery and slave trade. It further says that no one shall be held in servitude. No one should be forced to perform forced or compulsory labor. This article is also violated in cases of trafficking for labor, for slave trade, for slavery, or for servitude. We have so many labor laws. Still we have bonded labor, child labor, labor in hazardous employment by children. Then if we have so many laws in India to cater to the labor well-being, minimum wages act is there, working conditions are being fixed, the factories act is there, but still we are not able to implement the laws in true sense. Otherwise, this issue will be handled. And lot of labor laws do not talk about informal sector. So, this also needs to be taken into consideration. Article 9 says everyone has a right to liberty and security of person and no one shall be subjected to arbitrary arrest or detention. This further says that no one should be deprived of his life or liberty except on grounds and in accordance with such procedure as are established by law. Very important article, which talks about your liberty. Similarly, we have Constitution of India, which also talks about details in liberty rights. We have Fundamental Rights chapter, and then we have Directive Principles of State Policy, which talks about the security of the people, social security, cultural security, economic security. But if the Constitution is violated, if the legislations are violated, if the protocol, convention and this covenant is violated, then we have a case of human trafficking in India. Article 10 lays down that anybody who has been deprived of liberty shall be treated with humanity and with respect for the inherent dignity of the human person. Dignity rights, dignity and worth of a human being. Accused person shall be segregated from convicted person and shall be treated separately. We have discussed, that habitual criminals should be kept separately. We have a Juvenile Justice Act which also talks about segregation of children. Reformation and reintegration should be the focus. Juveniles should be separated from adults. So we have all these provisions implemented in the national law, but still we find violation in terms of poor implementation of law, in terms of, lack of coordination between the stakeholders who are responsible to implement the law. Then we have to use technological intervention to help people reform and reintegrate in the society. If the reformation program is designed keeping in view the interest and the participation of the person who is a victim of trafficking or a survivor of trafficking, then that program will have a meaningful meaning for that person. Reintegration should happen in the family. So counseling is required. Sometimes, you need psychological help also to counsel people to keep these victims in the families, because they are not accused or people who should be convicted, but they are victims of trafficking. Then we have a juvenile justice legislation which talks about juveniles should be separated from adults. Juvenile Justice Care and Protection of Children Act 2015, which we have also discussed. Article 14 talks about all persons shall be equal before the courts and tribunals, equality before law and equal protection of law under Article 14 of the Constitution of India, and similarly we have Article 14 under this covenant also. Principle of fair trial shall be applicable in all cases. The press and public shall be excluded from the trial. In camera trial we have seen. Fast track court we have seen. We have seen the disadvantage of press doing media trial. People coming as judges and giving their judgments, sitting on the platforms of media. Everyone shall be presumed innocent until proven guilty according to the law, and this principle is followed in India. In the determination of any criminal charge against him, everyone shall be entitled to the following minimum guarantees in full equality: to be informed promptly and in detail in a language which he understands of the nature and cause of the charge against him, to have adequate time and facilities for the preparation of his defense, and to communicate with the counsel of his own choice. A very rare, thing to happen in cases of human trafficking, because neither they are educated, neither they are aware about the court proceedings, neither they get a fair chance to talk to the counsel. To be tried without undue delay, we have seen that due to lack of infrastructure, lack of judges, so many cases are pending in the court of law. So we should have a proactive mechanism wherein we should have more appointments of judges, because we cannot expect a single person to handle so many cases at one go without doing justice. So justice requires time, justice requires a due process. So if we can use technology, if we can just fill in the vacancies, even for the support staff, we need to fill in the vacancies if we have to realize this article in true sense in India. Because justice delayed is justice denied. So to avoid undue delay, we have to have the concept of fast track court. We cannot overburden the same judges with so many cases. We have to use technology in taking the evidences, in calling or recalling the statement of the witnesses, and we have to protect the victims and survivors of human trafficking. To be tried in his presence and to defend himself in person or through legal assistance of his own choosing, to be informed if he does not have any legal assistance of this right, and to have legal assistance assigned to him in any case where the interest of justice so require, and without payment by him in any case if he does not have sufficient means to pay for it. And this is now we have legal aid provision in India. To examine or have examined the witnesses against him and to obtain the attendance and examination of witnesses on his behalf under the same condition as witnesses against him. To have a free assistance of an interpreter if he cannot understand or speak the language used in the court. Not to be compelled to testify against himself, self-incrimination, or to confess guilt. We have this provision in India. In the case of juvenile person, the procedure shall be such as will take account of their age and the desirability of promoting their rehabilitation. Everyone convicted of a crime shall have the right to his conviction and sentence being reviewed by a higher tribunal according to law. So you have the right to appeal. You have the right to be reviewing this judgment. When a person has by a final decision been convicted of a criminal offence, and when subsequently his conviction has been reversed or he has been pardoned on the ground that a new or newly discovered fact shows conclusively that there has been a miscarriage of justice, the person who has suffered punishment as a result of such conviction shall be compensated according to law, unless it is proved that the non-disclosure of that unknown fact in time is wholly or partly attributable to him. So he will be compensated if injustice has been done to him. No one shall be liable to be tried or punished again for any offence for which he has been finally convicted or acquitted in accordance with the law and penal procedure of every country. Double jeopardy. No one shall be held guilty of any criminal offence on account of any act or omission which did not constitute a criminal offence under national or international law at the time when it was committed, nor shall a heavier penalty be imposed than the one that was applicable at the time when the criminal offence was committed, ex post facto law. So we have all these provisions under the Constitution of India. If subsequent to the commission of the offence, provision is made by law for the imposition of higher penalty, the offender shall benefit thereby. So if the penalty is lighter or if the penalty has been reduced, that benefit will be given to the accused, but the higher penalty will not be imposed on him. Nothing in this article shall prejudice the trial and punishment of any person for any act or omission which at the time when it was committed was criminal according to the general principles of law recognized by community of nations, a very important provision. Article 23 talks about the family is the natural and fundamental group unity of society and is entitled to protection by society and the state. The right of men and women of marriageable age to marry and to found a family shall be recognized, and we have all these rights under the Fundamental Rights chapter. No marriage shall be entered into without a free and full consent of the intending spouse. So, in cases of trafficking, for forced marriage, for deceitful marriage, for selling people, we have seen that this article is violated. State parties to the present covenant shall take appropriate steps to ensure equality of rights and responsibilities of spouses as to marriage, during marriage, and at its dissolution. In the case of dissolution, provision shall be made for the necessary protection of any children. And we have our laws related to marriage in India, which are very much taking into consideration the interest of the child, and the intention is that the family should be a union and not dissolve. Article 24 talks about every child shall have without any discrimination as to race, color, sex, language, religion, national or social origin, property or birth, the right to such measures of protection as are required by his status as a minor on the part of his family, society and the state. This is a very important article, and we have juvenile justice legislation in India. We have Constitution of India which talks about these rights in detail. Every child shall be registered immediately after birth and shall have a name. Every child has a right to acquire a nationality. So, we have nationality law, and then we know that we get nationality by birth. Article 26 talks about all persons are equal before the law and entitled without any discrimination to the equal protection of law. Article 14 of Constitution of India. In this respect, the law shall prohibit any discrimination and guarantee to all persons equal and effective protection against discrimination. The principle of non-discrimination is followed in India on the ground of race, color, sex, language, religion, political or other opinion, national or social origin, property, birth or other status. A very important article reflected in the Constitution of India. So, in the end, I would just like to say that we have this covenant on civil and political right, which is considered to be the first generation of human rights, covenant. But we find that this covenant has been reflected in the Constitution of India in different legislatures passed by the Parliament of India and by state legislatures also. But we need to be aware about these laws. We need to be focused on getting these rights realized, and as stakeholders we need to keep the interest of the welfare state at paramount importance than the interest of individuals. So, individual interest should not clash with the interest of society at large, and we should not have cases of human trafficking if we follow the articles and the provisions under different legislations, conventions, protocols and covenants. Thank you all for listening. Have a safe day.